Hey everyone, welcome to another Node.js tutorial. In this video, we'll be going through how to make API requests to external APIs using the Node Fetch module. We'll be covering GET and POST requests since they're the two main request methods, and the other ones are really similar to them. Now, before I begin, I just want to mention some benefits of using this module in particular, is that if you're familiar with the default JavaScript fetch API, as you can see here, then Node Fetch won't be anything new to you at all because it follows the same syntax but can be used on the backend in your Node files. I would also like to mention that there are other alternatives, other NPM modules that you can use in replacement of Node Fetch, and they include the native Node.js modules such as, called HTTPS, Axios, request promise native, and the list goes on. But for the sake of this video, we'll be focusing on Node Fetch. Anyway, that is what we will cover in this video, and let's get started. Alright, so for the GET request, we'll be using NASA's Astronomy Picture of the Day API, as you can see here. And basically, this is just a simple GET API and a GET endpoint, and what it will return is a JSON object. Sorry, it's not parsed here, but basically return a JSON object similar to this. And what we really want to get out of the JSON object is this URL right here. And I'll just move the text here. And if we paste that, that just loads a picture, space picture, pretty. And yeah, that's pretty much it. An astronomy picture of the day, hence the name. All right, so to begin, I have some basic code that I set up in my previous video. You can check it out. I'll probably put a link in the description as well, but we don't need any of that, so you can actually work off this without watching the previous video at all. So anyway, to begin, well, let's create a simple GET endpoint, and we'll call it fetch underscore image request result response, and just some boilerplate stuff. Bear with me here. Quick log message, endpoint call. It's good to have some log messages throughout your code just in case something goes wrong. And all right, yeah. So you can also follow along in terms of reading the documentation and watching the video as well. But basically, we'll pretty much follow the documentation in terms of their syntax and what they pass in, like the URL and the request options. But as you can see here, fetch will take a URL, so the URL to send the request to, as well as an options object. And you can check out the details of what you can put in the options object. We'll try to keep things simple in this video, so I'm just going to create a quick URL, empty string, empty string, oh shoot, quotation problem. Empty string, semicolon. All right, and options. So in options, one of the things you can specify is the HTTP method you want to use. And for the video, we'll just be using get for now. And since it's a get method, we don't need any headers or request body. So I'm just going to leave it at that, just a method. And one very important thing, we need to install the module first. So before we can call it, obviously. So what you can do is type in your terminal npm install node-fetch, and I already have it installed, so I won't hit enter. And once you have it installed, you can go to the top of your file or wherever. Actually, I prefer to keep my variables at the top, and we'll just call it fetch and require it node-fetch. All right. Since we are using an API that requires an authentication or API key, as you can see here, we will need to store it somewhere, and I will keep it as a constant up here. But best practice, this is definitely not a best practice. Things you can do that are better include storing, say, like an environment variable, or using some other hosted service like Vault to store your secrets and whatnot. But for the sake of this video, let's just keep it simple and keep it right here. I'll probably delete the count after anyway. So yeah, I'm just going to create a variable to get the response. And we make sure you type await here before we call the fetch function, because this is an asynchronous request. And yeah, but yeah, so we pass in the URL and the options. Let me just quickly get the URL. That'll be everything up to here. And we can use something called string templating to pass in variables, and we need to pass in our API key into our string. And that should be right. All right, cool. And after, we also want to log the response, and I'll just make a clear response log message, and since we are doing an Express endpoint, we want to send the response back as a JSON so we can see it. And that's almost it for the setup. But in terms of following the fetch convention, after we get, oops, not the semicolon, after we get the, or after we make the fetch call and get the response back, we do want to parse into our JSON here. And so you can do the dot then because it is returning a promise. And we want to perform a catch statement following the same syntax in case an error ever happens. So it's good error handling techniques. And we'll just do a quick log message, console.error, message, what should our message be? Oh, how about, oh noes. All right, so that's a quick error message, and then the error object as well, and semicolon. All right, I think that should be right. Let me just take a quick look, and yeah, so response here should be a JSON object, and that is what we want and what we are expecting right now. But yeah, perfect. All right, and let's just start the Express server, node start. Common mistake, sorry. Whenever using await, make sure you do type, make sure you only use it inside an asynchronous function. If you don't, you will get an error like this and it'll just prompt you to. So, but yeah, just make sure to do that. Don't be silly like I was. But yeah, let's just open up our Postman. So basically, in my past videos, I used Insomnia as my REST client, and Postman is basically the same thing where you can make or send HTTP requests, and we'll be using localhost. Our endpoint is called fetch image, and we don't have any headers, don't have any body, and it's just get request. Simple as that. Let's try to send it, and hopefully we get a response. And as you can see in our log message, we already got a response object, and thankfully Postman formats it for us, and this is exactly what we want. So that was quite simple, as you can see. And since we do want the URL, what we can do here is actually just, instead of sending a JSON object, we can just send back just the URL. And save. Yeah, it depends on your use case, but if you just want the URL, this is something that you can do, and we'll test it out right now. Send another request. And as you can see, we only get the URL. And if you click it, it will lead to the astronomy picture of the day. And that's pretty much it for our get endpoint, making a request to the get endpoint using the node fetch. Let's move on to trying a post. It's very similar. Let me just set up a Express post endpoint first. We can call it, I don't know, store image or something. All right. We won't actually be storing an image here, but for the sake of the consistency, let's just call it that. We can actually copy paste most of this stuff here. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Store image, and I pulled a dummy API. I just found it online real quick. This is a post endpoint, so I'll be using this one in the video. And we will no longer need the API key. And yeah, so generally post endpoints are something like you're creating a post, creating a user, things like that, depending on your use case. And this is just create something. It doesn't matter what it is. Our method will be we need to change the post. And because it is a post request, you usually want to attach some request body. Otherwise, it's not really different from any other kind of method. So how to access the request body? Basically, what you can do is you do request, so req.body, and that's taking it from this parameter here, thanks to Express simplifying it for us. And we type comma, and all we need now is just some headers. And this depends completely on what you are trying to send to the server through your post request. A common example is just a content type header, and usually that would be application/JSON because it's one of the most common types. But it depends on your use case again, and you will need to verify that. But yeah, for this one, let's just use this. It will do, and I think everything looks good here. Let me just change this back to JSON, and we'll save, clear that, and hopefully this works. I set this up here. So to use Postman, if you want to specify request header, just type here in the header section, content type, and oops, application/JSON, and some body. I'll go raw, and I'll just put some empty body because we don't really have anything to store. And perfect. I think this is the response we're looking for. As you can see in the log message, we also get that. But yeah, this is some random response that we get from that random endpoint. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up this video. Again, if there's anything you guys want a tutorial about, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I love to learn something new or teach you something that I already know about. But anyway, yeah, if you found this video helpful, please do drop a like below and subscribe. But for now, I'll see you in the next video.